Okay, excellent. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. The next part of the program is the rollout of a paper called AI in Agriculture, Opportunities, Challenges, and Recommendations that is being published by CAST. And CAST is the Council for Agricultural Science and Technology. So you're seeing a picture of Chris Boomsma here. That's obviously not me. I'm Alex Thomasson. I'm here at Mississippi State University. Chris Boomsma is the Executive Vice President and CEO of CAST. And Chris was unable to be here because of the weather that was coming through the Midwest last night. So I told him I'm actually the current past president of CAST. So I'm representing Chris just to talk a little bit about CAST for a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to give an introduction to this paper that 13 of us co-authored. And then I'm going to call up several of the other co-authors to serve on a panel. And we'll talk in some detail about some things that are in the paper. And then we'll certainly entertain questions from the audience. My memory is that we've got about an hour and 20 minutes for this. And then we've got a brief presentation by Ag Launch after that. So without further ado, again, Council for Agricultural Science and Technology is publishing this paper. But let me talk first about CAST. CAST's mission is to convene and coordinate networks of experts to assemble, interpret, and communicate credible, unbiased, science-based information to policymakers, the media, the private sector, and the public. So slightly different from what a lot of us academics are used to doing in terms of developing articles for publication in referee journals. CAST's papers are similar quality, but they're more often review type papers where experts have written on a topic of scientific agricultural science that is of interest in the particular day. And the goal is really to inform policymakers and the public so they can make policymaking decisions based on factual science. The vision of CAST is a world where decision-making related to agriculture, food, and natural resources is based on credible information developed through reason, science, and consensus building. A few quick facts on CAST. CAST is a 501c3 membership-supported nonprofit organization. It's formed in 1972, and Norman Borlaug was mentioned earlier. He was one of two of the key people who helped found CAST back in the early 70s as a result of a 1970 National Academy of Sciences report. CAST is nonpartisan and apolitical. CAST membership includes 27 scientific societies, 20 universities, including Mississippi State University, 19 libraries, 45 nonprofits, 21 companies, and over 500 individuals from 46 states and 7 countries. CAST celebrated its 50th anniversary 3 years ago, 2022. So how does CAST accomplish its mission? With the help of many volunteer contributors, 65 board members representing scientific societies, companies, nonprofits, and universities, nearly 200 active task force members working on CAST reports that are yet to be released, volunteer scientific experts as authors and reviewers, more than 1,800 volunteers since 2008. So essentially it's a volunteer job to write these papers, to review these papers, but with the purpose of informing the public and influencing regulation and policymaking. So in case you're interested, please consider joining CAST, whether it be through your institution or as an individual member. I'll leave this up just for a moment. You can see the cast-science.org is where you can find CAST on the web. But there's a phone number, there's an email, there's also social media links for you to look at. Lots of good stuff. By the way, CAST's communications presence has been greatly enhanced in the last year or so with some new communications folks at the organization. And so this is actually what the landing page of this new paper looks like. So if you go to the website for this page, this is kind of what it looks like. You can download the paper there. It's AI in Agriculture, Opportunities, Challenges, and Recommendations. And so again, the title, and I just want to spend a few minutes talking about what's in the paper, and forgive me for a bit wordy slides, but we'll have some comments after this, but I just want to give you a quick introduction to it. So the paper is essentially in 5 sections. 5 sections. It starts out with a section on Introduction to AI in Agriculture, and within that introduction is a description of AI and key points. And I pulled in a table from the paper that you can see on the right that essentially talks about some of the major advances in AI. It defines them, and several of them have acronyms that are used throughout the paper there. The second part of this is just a discussion of the integration of AI into agriculture and the fact that that lags the integration of AI into other industries. And the last part of the introduction really focuses on the importance of AI in addressing agricultural challenges. And these include food security, which has been mentioned a number of times today, but it also includes food safety, traceability, farm profitability, efficiency, environmental conservation, and the improvement of farm work. The second section is on AI use and development in agriculture. And there's a significant section on generative AI in agriculture, and the example given there is ExtensionBot, which if you were one of the ones who went through the workshops here at the conference this morning, then you saw a good presentation workshop on ExtensionBot. We talk a good bit about other applications of AI in agriculture, many under the heading of machine learning. You can see there for livestock monitoring, for traceability and fraud detection, for the analysis of multi-omic data such as phenomic and proteomic data, yield prediction and weather prediction. And then we talk a bit about what's called discriminative AI, which is typically deep learning for image analysis, discriminating things like insects for identification, diseases, and discriminating fruit quality or maturity classification. Last, we talk a bit about pre-trained deep learning models for low data training and fast operation in autonomous systems. And for those of you who have been doing this kind of work, I'm sure you're familiar with YOLO, or the You Only Look Once algorithm. AlexNet and ResNet are examples as well. The third section focuses on challenges to developing AI for agriculture and efforts to mitigate them. And let me just talk about that for a second. So we do mention numerous challenges. We also try to talk in the part that's on efforts to mitigate them. We talk about things that are actually going on in the present day in this area. And then ultimately we lead into some recommendations at the end. But what are some challenges that are unique to agriculture? Well, data incompatibility. If you're used to dealing with on-farm data or supply chain data on the farm, the compatibility of the data is a challenge. There are efforts such as Ag Gateway to improve that situation, but it is still currently a challenge. There is a lack of AI model applicability from farm to farm or region to region. There is commonly a lack of connectivity in rural and remote farm areas. There are concerns about data privacy among farmers and stakeholders at large. There is resistance to change in the farming community, such as if I adopt this technology, how will it change all the other aspects of my farm operations? There is typically a lack of an AI-skilled workforce, and there are commonly high adoption costs for AI and other technologies in agriculture. And then there are some challenges that may not be quite as specific to agriculture that are more general across industries, such as the lack of domain knowledge, or concern about losing domain knowledge in the age of AI. I mean, imagine if you're growing up in the age of AI where most of what you do is working on a computer or an iPad and having AI do the work for you. And if that system doesn't work for whatever reason, how do you accomplish those tasks without knowing the details? Cybersecurity is a big issue, particularly as we go into the realm of autonomous systems. We have concerns about the needs of workers involving AI in agriculture, about the needs of consumers, and I think here particularly about issues like traceability. There are ethical considerations about how AI in agriculture is used. And then there are obviously concerns about research funding. Research funding is critical to the development of AI in agriculture. The fourth section is 3 major considerations in developing AI for agriculture, and the first of those is promoting innovation and competition for AI in agriculture. Essentially, there needs to be sort of an environment that is set up for people to develop this technology and bring it to market. And so that means breaking down structural barriers in agriculture that limit AI's potential and adoption, collaboration across disciplines and industry sectors, and building a competitive landscape. The second issue there is advancing American leadership in AI for agriculture. U.S. has great assets such as agricultural productivity and infrastructure, the history of innovation and resources, but the U.S. also needs additional AI infrastructure as AI continues to grow, multidisciplinary collaboration, and cross-sector collaboration. And then finally, we talk about opportunities for standards for AI in agriculture. So AI in agriculture efforts commonly lack expertise in the integration into large-scale agricultural systems. So an example of this is, how do you ensure systems for AI in agriculture are safe and effective? Standards can ensure safe, efficient, reliable operation and cross-brand compatibility. Standards are documents that define best practices, protocols, and frameworks for developing products and processes across companies and industries. Adherence to standards is typically voluntary, although it can be sort of enforced, if you will, by government or by the courts, but typically it's voluntary. An example of an AI-related standard for consideration in agriculture is ISO IEC TR 5469, year 2024. And that is titled Artificial Intelligence, Functional Safety, and AI Systems. This is one example among many, but I'm just throwing it up there, so if you have an interest in this, that's something you can look up and look into. And finally, Section 5 is summary and recommendations, and most of this is pulled and condensed from the previous sections of the paper, but we're trying to give policymakers and regulators sort of a sense of the areas where we think they should be looking. And one of these is in terms of promoting a competitive environment across the industry. Second is promoting broad benefit of AI in agriculture. You know, we ideally want all scales of farms in all regions to be able to participate and benefit. Promote practical and transparent algorithms. These are the type that people can understand, hopefully, when they see the result of an AI algorithm. Promote education and training. Again, the workforce of the future in agriculture is going to need to be technically trained, particularly with respect to AI. Promote enabling funding, and this involves research funding. It also involves broadband connectivity, so people can move data from one place to the next. And public and private partnerships are important as well. We suggest the promotion of Ag Data Core Principles, which helps to deal with the data privacy issue. And then promoting cybersecurity, and this isn't specific necessarily to agriculture, but I think it's particularly important in agriculture because of the way that we're moving towards autonomous systems. And then finally, promoting standards across the industry. And with that, I am going to stop, and actually I'm not going to take questions. I'm going to bring a panel up here and ask them to take your questions. So if you gentlemen would join me, Mahendra Bhandari, Luis Tedeschi, Carlos Rodriguez Lopez, Ezekiel McReynolds, Thanos Gentimus, Andres Ferreira, and Robert Strong. So we're going to have a large panel who are co-authors on this paper. And guys, as you come up, I'm going to hand each side of the panel a mic so you can pass it back and forth on your side. And then I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, what you do a little bit, and if you would just go ahead and lead into maybe an aspect of the paper that you contributed to or something that you think is particularly important about AI in agriculture. And we'll do that just to kind of get things started, and then we'll start taking questions from the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ezekiel McReynolds. I go by Zeke. I have a master's of science in agricultural engineering, but I've spent the past half decade working in the DoD as a data scientist, specifically focusing on cyber and cyber-related analytic intrusions. And Dr. Thomasson, once upon a time when I was a student, had a very big stamp sticker that said, "How would Google farm?" Recently, I decided to flip that on its head and wrote a white paper on how would Google secure farming. I sent it off to him. He invited me to collaborate with these fine gentlemen. I'm really excited about the opportunity to have a discussion on what does responsible data resiliency and data privacy look like in the age of information that we're moving into from an operational technology into an information technology? Thank you.
I'm Luis Tedeschi. I'm from Texas A&M University. My background is in ruminant nutrition. I'm in the Department of Animal Science, and my focus is more on bioenergetics, climate, smart climate, I should say, environment impact of ruminants, and also computer models. Most of those, the ones that we develop for the national academies, for the beef cattle nutrient requirements model, and any type of modeling we need for ruminant production. It's good to be here.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Strong, also at Texas A&M University. I'm a social scientist in the Department of Agricultural Leadership, Education, and Communications. What I study is stakeholder adoption, or the knowledge transfer of these innovations from our institutions to stakeholders, and what impact that adoption or their adoption has made. And secondly, if they rejected these innovations, I also measure that and examine why they have rejected those and what we need to do to either revise the innovation or revise our messaging or marketing strategies that promote adoption. So, as Alex had there on the screen, that section 3 and 4 of the paper, particularly me, I'm section 4, to promote the innovation and also to break down those barriers to adoption, or as we call those, break down those resistors. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mahendra Vandari. I also come from Texas A&M University. My background is I'm trained in agronomy, but got a chance to work in the intersection of technology and crop production system. And in my program, we work a lot on utilizing remote sensing technologies, such as satellite, UAVs, and small robotic platforms to collect the data sets, develop decision support tools, and things like that. And in this paper, I was focused on the application side of AI, as well as a little bit on the education component in this paper. So looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Well, I'm Carlos Rodriguez. I'm not from Texas A&M. I'm from the University of Kentucky, Department of Horticulture. I'm interested in epigenomics, and in particular environmental epigenomics, how the environment and the genome interacts. In particular, I use epigenomics to look for biomarkers that can predict quality, but also that we can use to predict disease or the exposure to the environment. In the paper, I focus on the use of multiomics or the application of AI and machine learning to analyze multiomic data sets.
Hello, everyone. I am Thanos Gentimis, and I'm not part of the Texas A&M yet. I'll be joining this summer, though. I am currently at LSU. And my background is in mathematics, statistics, and data science. I'm more involved in the theoretical aspects of AI, but also recently I've moved into the general application, especially in agriculture. With respect to the project, the paper, I was involved in, the theoretical aspects, but also I'm very interested in ethical considerations, workforce development, and what are these problems that can be let's say, addressed immediately with AI. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andres Ferreira. I work for Syngenta. I'm originally an electronic engineer, but drifted greenward since then. My master's was in agrometeorology, and my PhD was in agricultural and biological engineering at the University of Florida. And there I learned how to solve a series of problems using crop simulation models. But as I tried to apply those in large systems, it became very frustrated seeing the limitations that a lack of data interoperability created for being able to scale these systems up. So for the last 15 years or so, I've been primarily working on enabling data interoperability, and a big part of that has been in international data standards organizations. So I have worked as a volunteer in Ag Gateway, that was mentioned earlier, in the Ag Electronics Foundation, that we'll probably hear more about tomorrow, and in the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, where I chair a new technical committee on data-driven agri-food systems. And in this paper, my primary concern has been scale. How do we scale things up through standards? And so that's part of the section 4 that was mentioned by Dr. Thomasson. So thank you very much.
So I think the way that we'll do this now is if you will raise your hand if you have a question, and I will walk to you and give you the mic and let you ask questions of the panel. And you can direct your question to an individual, or you can just throw it out there and see who catches it. Either way, I think is fine. So what questions do we have from the audience? Ed, your hand halfway came up there, so I'm assuming that was I have a question.
Yeah, I got to take advantage of all this expertise on stage. So this is to the group. I work for cotton farmers, and so we're always trying to figure out how can we make technology more useful for them. And I'd say the best example I've seen to date on AI is like the detect and spray systems. And John Deere is a sponsor, so we'll call out their See and Spray system. And so that's something that's, a farmer can adopt without just all they have to do is turn it on, right? So what do you see as the next big thing, like a detect and spray, that's going to really bring some of these AI tools to the farm, say in the next 5 to 10 years?
Who wants to be gutsy and jump on that question?
Looking at things from my perspective, I think that we're making a lot of progress on interoperability of IoT data, being able to feed that into some decision support tools, for example, in irrigation. So I wouldn't be surprised if irrigation scheduling becomes something easier to do. It's paradoxically, although water is an increasingly scarce resource, the fraction of growers and ranchers that actually use scientific irrigation scheduling is quite low, in great part because it's just so hard to pull together the pieces that you need to make principled decisions. So as our AI-assisted interoperability improves, I think that that scientific irrigation scheduling will get easier as well.
I don't have a specific answer, but I can tell you this. From data that we see, every application that is related to drones, capture data from drones, that has the biggest potential nowadays because the adoption of drones is the fastest growing, precision ag tool right now. So if you're working in the space of data is being captured by drones somehow and then turned into an action, you're in the lead. If you extend the time period from 5 to 10 and make it, let's say, 20 to 25, autonomous tractors, like moving away from having the man sitting on there and just being somewhere in their homes and navigating it autonomously or just barely looking at it. I know there's a lot of hurdles for that, and right now there's no legislation for it. But if we put these two, I think any sort of application that comes from like analyzing images through drones and any sort of automated, auto steering at on steroids, basically those are the two candidates.
That was not a mic drop. That was, well, I think what we also need to think about how miniaturization of sequencing devices, DNA sequencing devices, is going to affect our farms. I think one thing that we could see very soon is the release of tools to predict diseases on farm using DNA sequencing. That is something that we probably see in the next few years.
Okay, I can start from here. So again, I think the example that I'm giving might fall into the narrow AI and a little bit more specific working in cotton as well. Is Thanos mentioned the autonomous system, but I think it would be the swarm robotics that will be the future. Multiple autonomous systems working together, maybe drones and the ground vehicles working together, making decisions with minimum interventions from the producers. That I think will happen. And another thing that I really see is that coming from, again, the crop monitoring and management area, is that a lot of devices and systems collect the data set. Like there is a satellite collecting data, there is a drone collecting data, and then there is a farm machinery collecting the data sets. So we need to somehow find a way that all of these data sets, no matter what, should converge into the right place and work together and give the synergy in monitoring and management systems. And the future would be more on the forecasting capabilities, not be reactive, but becoming how we can improve the proactive decision making, how we can forecast the long-term future with what is happening right now, so that the producers are more proactive in decision making and have better risk management strategies. So those are the three different aspects that I see going into the future as creating the synergy as much as possible.
Well, I'm going to mention from the livestock perspective what we see, what we are seeing actually right now. I think the first one is AI could actually make it a lot easier to count animals, identify animals. When we're talking on a grazing situation, it's for us it's hard for us to understand. Well, counting is something so simple, but when you're talking about a large area, those animals are, you do have to locate those animals and count animals. So I think in association with drones would be something we have to do. And also disease detection in terms of animals, livestock. And disease detection not only for grazing animals, but also in feedlot type animals, and also any type of livestock in a closed environment, a confined type production of animals. Disease detection is very important, and that is actually going to help a lot in terms of whenever we talk about this antimicrobial resistance stuff, is really target specific animals that really need to be treated rather than treating the whole pen or treating the whole herd or something like that. I think it's also important in terms of the environment, really the detection of where those animals are located at when we're talking about in a grazing environment, and in association with the satellite imagery to actually detect where those animals are, what type of supplementation those animals might actually need, so have some sort of a strategic supplementation of these animals, so in association with satellite imagery. And to finalize all of this is, I think AI in general has a very important role when we talk about in terms of modeling, because we use a lot of what we call mechanistic models in nutrition at least, and some other areas in livestock production. I do believe that hybrid intelligent mechanistic models is what is really around the corner. And I do believe in the integration of smart or intelligent systems with the mechanistic systems. And I think that also takes into account some of what was discussed in terms of our concern about education and preparing the next generation and so forth.
From my perspective, I'll give you a cybersecurity spin. It's not something that's innovative in the essence of, but I know most people, if you're working at a university, your cybersecurity people are very busy beavers building impediments to progress. That's what we're really good at. And that's because we see everything as a danger. We heard the extension say, hey, this AI thing, it's scary. We don't know what it looks like. What is it going to do? And your cybersecurity professionals are just going to slap it all down, lock it all out, and keep it out. I'm here because I want to have this conversation. I want to help. We heard each individual here talk about it from a perspective of data. What does that data look like? How can we keep that data your data? How can we keep that data secure? Ransomware is $1 billion industry, and food security and food agriculture is a critical infrastructure. So if we can start having that conversation with the extension groups, with the farmers, with the vendors about what the underpinnings of all of these innovations are going to have, we can help the adoption of those occur. So instead of being the busy beaver building those impediments, we want to help that flow and get you there faster but securely.
Yeah, my take on your question would be a lot more effort on our part to engage growers in terms of what they believe they need or what they think they need. And I don't necessarily mean bottom up or top down. I'm referring to more of an increased symbiosis or synergy between our institutions and stakeholders in these communities. And I think you can call this community engaged research. I know that's a hot topic in some parts of the world. That might help us better build more trust in our brands or trust in academic pursuits or research pursuits. But also, as Alex talked about earlier, in that section 4, that would help, and I totally agree, that would help us positively influence knowledge transfer or adoption of these technologies, as you said, in the next 3 to 5 years or 5 years from now. So in summary, I think we all could do a better job about engaging commodity boards, local stakeholders in rural communities. And in the back of my mind as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about our current administration and what they're trying to do or focus on the actual stakeholders or ranchers and growers.
Okay. Other questions?
Thank you. Great team. I guess a very nice makeup of academia and industry. My question is, how can we develop the best ways to develop partnership between academia? What is the role of academia in developing AI applications, and how can we best link with technology companies to foster the technology all the way from the implementation to the delivery to the farmers? And in academia, we're very good at solving problems, but we're terrible at developing finished products and marketing those products. How can we, if CAST will have a function in that? How can we develop a system that will help to link between the academia to private companies and to develop technology, AI technology?
I'll start again with standards. If you have a standardized way of packaging data and payloads, data payloads and models that make them more reusable, right, then you're empowering people in academia to focus on the things that they know best, right, which is solving those problems without necessarily having to implement these big tech stacks, right, and all this secure deployment infrastructure, like our cybersecurity colleague was talking about, that is sometimes 80% of the total amount of effort, but it's outside of the things that academics are typically being paid to do, if you will. So I think that by setting a set of ground rules that allow us to increase interoperability and package that, package those models and those data in ways that make them easier to use, then that synergy is enabled and we can create more value together.
Again, my answer is going to be a little bit, sideways. I think academia could spend a little bit more time in developing the workforce that would later on become part of the industry. And we have some, good opportunities to work with the farmers, because the farmers want to share the data easily with a university. They're a little bit more reluctant to do that with companies. So I don't think we should try to compete or fully integrate with companies, but we could basically play to our strengths, which is to develop the next generation of researchers that can then go to industry and create their own stuff. And that will be best achieved if we partner with the industries to figure out the good questions and the good qualities we want our students to have. And that is actually one of the problems that we have identified. Workforce development is a big thing, and we will need to spend the next couple of years to train people that understand both agronomy and AI. So I want to see a little bit more action on that part. To tell you the truth, I don't see like an immediate collaboration happening without some of these barriers being dropped. And it's a challenge for sure. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my take.
I think my comment is in line with what Thanos was talking about. I think is education. I think academia needs to focus in education, teaching, in the sense that we need to keep training our students on the basics and the fundamentals. And this is a concern that I've seen before, that if it makes it too easy on AI for all of the students may not actually learn the basics, and we're going to lose that information about the basics. So I think we need to keep reinforcing the basics so they know all of the disciplines, everything that we've been taught before, and we add the AI as a tool for them to actually use and increase the outreach of that knowledge. But we do need to have concrete students that do understand the underlying mechanisms behind agriculture production in general.
I think also that if we want to interact with industry, I think we need to think that not everything that we can do is needed outside. So go out, study the market, see if there is a need for your solution in the market, or even if the market is ready for your solution, because sometimes it's too early.
I tend to agree with what's been shared about education or knowledge extension, or formal and non-formal education. One thing that really concerns me, or I have a growing concern about the general public's increased distrust of science, and how we all can help improve that. And so what I think a lot about is we as land-grant institutions have a competitive advantage over a lot of organizations in that we have research and extension centers. Besides our campuses, or home campuses, we have RECs in all of our states. And collectively, I think we can do a better job, one, in answering your question, of working with the main campus and the RECs about educating that regional area, whether they be youth or adults. In Texas, we're really fortunate in that we have 1,200 people a day move into the state of Texas. Every day, 1,200 people move to the state. It's been recently reported. And so as that number gets larger, there means more people probably will not know about the science and education or programs that we are developing. So I think the ground is fertile for us to be able to not just limit or reduce the distrust in science, but at the same time maximize the brand that we all represent for our collective institutions. And so, I would never suggest that this will be easy. However, I would suggest that the time is heightened now for us to be more accountable to the public's funds, what we're using those for, and our ability to express or document our public value, I think is higher now than it's ever been in my career. A research and extension center.
Yeah, sure. I can add a little bit on that one. And personal experience is we develop crop management decision support tools. Let's take an example. We utilize the satellite, but there is no way possible that I will be able to serve all the cotton producers to utilize that technology. And I think there has to be communication or transfer of technology that the company can take whatever we develop. We are really good in doing research, there is no doubt, but I don't think we have the capacity to reach each individual producers and make sure that technology is adopted. So I think the transfer of technology in such a way, whatever we develop could be easily transferred to the producer, is something we can do. And another thing that I have been thinking is the open science. Let's say we develop an algorithm, AI algorithm, and can we make it public so that a company anywhere in the world can make the use of that algorithm and serve the producers. So sharing the data set, sharing those algorithms that we develop and training those models, I think that is, in addition to whatever have been discussed, is something to collaborate as well.
I do want to add a practical advice, especially for younger professionals and students. I know that we are asked to do bibliography review and we start looking at a bunch of papers that are published and peer-reviewed. There is value in looking at announcements from companies. There is value in looking at Substacks from companies that are in the field. So start adding that into your bibliography review. Making sure that what you're developing is also something that could be potentially useful. So if you're trying to find the bridge, start looking at what that side is researching, what that side is interested in. So perhaps if you are a graduate student trying to figure out what to do, add that in your bibliographic review. Just like maybe it also increases your potential of finding employment later on, but it also makes sure that what you're researching is relevant to what industry is looking for at the time.
Okay, I think I have a question here.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question now, two questions, but maybe one. The first one is on about the cost of implementing AI for a farm-based kind of. How do you see it for now, and how do you see it in the future? Do you think that cost is going to increase or decrease from now? For me, I work on design of tools for based AI, but if I try to think how many tools a farmer needs when he has a kind of a big farm, and how much is per tool, then I start thinking is it something that can make profit to a farmer, even if maybe that thing is very useful. So I'm trying to think how do you see the implementation cost for AI for now? But the second question is, for now we see, AI is very helpful, but in some areas people are trying to think it's going to take a lot of employment from many people. Instead of needing 10 people, you may need maybe only 2. How do you see it in an agricultural perspective from now in the future? Thank you.
Let me start with the first question. I think there's 2 parts to that cost that I'm especially interested in. One is that in a way, growers see like a long line of people outside their door trying to take their attention, right? So it's not even just about the money, it's about the time. I often joke that the 7 most commonly used words in agriculture are like, just to sanitize it a little bit, I don't have time for that stuff, right? And because they're so busy, right? And so linking back to the previous question, one of the advantages of academia and industry working together is that when you layer additional functionality, when you bundle tools to solve incremental problems, like say scouting for a certain pest or predicting a disease and so forth, on top of say a farm management information system that the farmer is already using, right, then the probability that that will be adopted is likely to be much higher than if you're asking the farmer to add yet another tool to their toolbox, right? So I think there's an opportunity associated with that, cognitive cost, right? Another thing that I think is very important is the long-term cost of energy here, right? Because right now, there's a lot of excitement about AI that is essentially being subsidized by VC money, right? But the day will come when somebody's got to pay the power bill, right? And a lot of these applications are extremely energy intensive, right? And so when you have people taking these queries for granted that take a lot of energy and therefore have a cost associated with them, and then you say, who's going to pay for this, right? So I think that's going to force us to have to come to a reckoning of what things are truly useful and worth the operating costs and which ones aren't. And about your second question, let me think about it for a while. Let's let the microphone go around. Thank you.
I mean, this is not going to answer directly your question, but you can also see not only what is the cost of implementing AI, but also how AI can be used to reduce costs. For example, instead of having to look at just an example from my research, instead of having to look at 57 million markers across a genome, using AI, we know that we only need to look at only 64 of those 57 million markers. I mean, the cost associated to that in order to predict a condition is going to be greatly reduced just by the use of AI that is also participating in the process of then analyzing those results. So it's not only how much it's going to cost, but how can we reduce the costs.
Yeah, I think from a livestock perspective, at least, say cattle, for instance, I think AI. It's probably not going to apply for everybody, right? So it depends on what is the size of your ranch and number of animals you have, and what are the main problems you have, and what you're trying to solve. So I think this is a case-by-case scenario. So for some, yes, it will. For some, it will not. It's probably going to cost more money and never going to be able to recover that money. So, but like what I said before, the examples that we see right now, like disease detection and treating animals before they die. So you're saving on that animal, and you're saving on treating all of the animals at the same at some point in time. So that will save for you, but it depends on how many animals you have. And that's what I say. It depends on what is the size of your business, and for livestock, it's probably not going to be for everybody, unless you have some sort of a co-op, that you have a co-op working with a group of many ranchers, and then that might be more efficient and more beneficial and more cost effective if you have that sort of activity or strategy.
I appreciate your question. This is not an ideal response to your question, but one thing that, I wonder if we flip the question and ask, what's it worth? Not what's it cost. And I totally agree with my friend Luis here. Academia is not for everyone. AI is not for everyone, based upon their goals. So, but for those who it could be for, I think an appropriate question is, what's it worth? What would that be worth to them?
To add to all the comments mentioned, one example that we have, an ad mentioned the see and spray technology that was developed by John Deere, very much adaptable, but very much expensive. And there is another company which is called Weed IT. What they did is they developed one single unit that does similar to what John Deere see and spray does. And then that single unit was again retrofitted to the current sprayer technology that the producers has. And instead of spending $200,000-$300,000, now producer might be able to do almost similar thing with $7,000-$8,000. So the essence of this is, the hope is that there will be a lot of companies coming up, and the presentation early was not that hopeful, but the competition will be more, and the cost for the producers to implement those technology will hopefully eventually go down with more innovations and more technologies that could be integrated in the current farming system will be evolving as time goes on. So,
if I could add just a touch to that question, and I think one of your questions was about the replacement of workers with AI or autonomous systems. And I think this answer is somewhat regional. It depends on where you are. But I know here in the United States that we largely have a farm labor problem that's driving the move towards autonomous systems. And so it's not so much that we're displacing workers, it's that we're trying to make up the gap where workers are unavailable to a large extent. And again, that's regional. I mean, it depends. But I would say worldwide, that is an increasing trend that farm labor is less and less available. But again, it's somewhat regional. The other thought is that when you talk about the expense of AI, I think it really depends on what technology that you're talking about. If you're talking about an electromechanical system that does amazing things, and See and Spray was mentioned, it does amazing things. It's expensive, so you have to have a large operation to be able to afford it, or you have to have a cooperative or some kind of service model that allows individual farmers to pay for it on a, let's say acre by acre basis. And so some of that depends on the business model. But AI is so varied in terms of the technologies that it touches. I think that David Clifford, you mentioned, it was Penn State, let me remember. Yeah, Plant Village. And I believe that, part of why that was done was to enable people who had an iPhone virtually anywhere just to identify a weed or something like that where there was a problem. And so the cost is minimal with that. I mean, you've probably already got the technology. It's just a matter of downloading an app that can do this. And it gives you a tremendous benefit that you didn't otherwise have. And so, again, I think it kind of depends on the technology to some extent, but service models or business models are part of the answer for the more sophisticated, more expensive equipment that uses AI. Okay,
and
other questions?
I want to add something
Please.
about the workforce problem. I don't see replacement, I see change, meaning a person that used to be a farmhand now is the drone operator. A person that used to be, the person that, creates the furrows is now the one that's leading the robot. So yes, there might be some sort of adjustment that needs to happen, but I don't think AI is replacing humans at this stage. AI is enabling them to move around and find something a little bit more meaningful. And I have a bunch of examples for that. Remember in Florida last year that we went and saw some people that were herding the cattle with the drones. And they told us like 4 years ago they were doing that with horses. So it was the same person exactly. So you might see that in the beginning. Now, as Alex said, we already have some shortage, let's say in specialty crops, in strawberries. They need like automated systems because they can't find people. Now, globally, I don't know what's happening, but I believe in the beginning, for the first 5 years, there will be this shift. People that used to do something, they're now going to be doing something AI-enabled. So that's the hope over there. But yeah.
Okay, in the back.
Alex, just a quick comment
Yeah, go ahead.
to echo what he just said. In my ISO committee, I've got 46 countries participating, and the idea that working in agri-food systems isn't an aspirational career choice in general is common to pretty much everyone, right? So what Alex was saying is that there tends to be a lack of available labor in agriculture, and a net migration away from agricultural areas worldwide, right? So hopefully an emergent property of what's happening here is a bit of a reversal there, as people say, wow, there's some really interesting problems to solve here and some really interesting tools to solve them with, and that maybe sticking around my village and trying to share this stuff with my people is actually, better than being a TikTok influencer. I don't know. I want to hold out some hope for that.
So as an educator, like what I feel is like, if you want to have a better adoption of any new technologies, I think it's important for us to train the next generation farmers, right, about these technologies. So what is your suggestion to people like us who actually are involved in teaching those next generation farmers, because these are the ones who will be adopting and who will enhance the adoption of these technologies? Any suggestion on that?
I can take that. So this digital and precision ag, if that's our goal, this is not an old person's game. This is a new, the new faculty, the new students, the new graduate students are the ones that need to jump in. So we need to start from the undergraduate level. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, statistics was something that was introduced and changed the world of science. AI is the thing now. So if your unit is creating, let's say, new curricula, if they're trying to figure out new, certificates or concentrations, it does help if you add somehow introductions, even from the undergraduate level first few years, appreciation of AI. Start teaching that at the fundamental level, and then integrate that into classes that already run. So you're doing, let's say, some sort of biology class, all right? Add in a Python code. All right. So start them easily, get them familiarized with these techniques, and then ultimately offer at the higher level, let's say fourth year or something like that, offer a digital and precision ag class taught by a person that is somewhere in the intersection. That's why I said you need a younger faculty, somebody that has spent a little bit of time with agronomy, but also knows the new techniques. But it will need to start early on with some sort of this is not like this, for example, Python or AI is not something magical that nobody can touch. Just like you show students what Excel is, spend an extra moment to show them what Python is. All right, and then of course at the graduate level you can have full-blown courses and whole system that lead you that. Now, personally, if you are teaching a class and you've already have, let's say, some sort of lab component to it, if that lab component used simple Excel techniques, start adding a little bit more. And then introduce the students to that idea and offer at whatever level some sort of AI classes. So I think that's the best way to do it. And don't wait until they are PhD fourth level, they're graduating tomorrow. Start very early.
I tend to agree with Thanos. I think we go back to the future and, again, leverage our competitive advantage, our 4-H programs, our connection to FFA. And we can even talk about stimulating those relationships even deeper with the scouts or boys and girls clubs. And so in any of those, you know, the 4-H model and FFA model have been around a long time of creating these project-based programs, right? And then there's award structure and there's recognition, and it gets youth excited and opens up a new door. And you know, 4-H has done really well in the last 20 years with robotics specific clubs in certain regions around the U.S. So I totally agree with Thanos. I think the onus is on us to create those opportunities or work with those faculty or extension specialists or extension agents or agricultural science teachers, and sharing this technology with them and helping them to the best of our ability create these curricular opportunities for those youth at that young age. And you know, the downstream result of that would be we open up an opportunity to matriculate those youth to our programs on campus as well. And so anyway, I think, again, I guess I keep saying this too much. We have a competitive advantage, you know, over most groups, where we have a conduit or pipeline to those groups already.
I wanted to add to that. I mean, I'm not on the panel, so it's bad for me out of form, I guess. But I'm Nathan with FarmNG. We do that Farm Robotics Challenge. A number of you, including Professor Mutu, have participated in that and won some of it. We believe strongly that you guys have that advantage of bringing those young people back to the farm, and so we've sold our platform to a number of universities and asked them to take the platform, build a cross-functional team of students, take the platform out to the farm, find a farmer and solve any problem, and bring it back. And we've had renowned researchers from Google and Amazon and NVIDIA and some of the universities here be judges to say, did that problem solve something for the farmers? And then we've given out prize money. I don't know how much is total that A&M won, but we'll say it was enough. And then we've also taken those players and brought them to the Future of Robotics and Agriculture Conference in Woodland, California. So, I mean, the exciting part about that program for all of us was that we've taken this cross-functional group of students that typically came from farms or been around agriculture and asked them to go back and ask somebody from agriculture what the problems are and apply that AI, that robotics that they're doing. We've had Hartnell Junior College students compete right up against Carnegie Mellon, and we got excited about it to the degree that we've now created a program for high schoolers to just build the Amiga from the ground up. So they build it and they get introduced to that CAN bus, to that AI platform, to the Python coding that they would use competitively at the next level. So that's my add to your comments. I'm sorry to jump into your panel, but thank you.
Sure. One more, it is an example that we are doing right now. We do have one project funded by USDA on training undergraduate students for research, extension, and education. And this project is a theme towards the intersection of engineering, data science, and agriculture. And what we do is every year we select 8 students, and 2 from crop science, general agriculture background, 2 from engineering, 2 from computer science. And then the idea that we thought was that this program is going to help them communicate between disciplines, how to reach out to right people, how to discuss about ideas, how computer science students can help agriculture students and things like that. So, and we give them a project with a problem that they all have to work together and find a solution. And this program helped them to understand, for example, computer science students understood, oh, there is a career in agriculture engineering, for example, and how better they can communicate with agriculture students. And same for agriculture students as well. So program like these that they can train the transdisciplinary interaction, communication, and understanding their language would be really beneficial, I think, rather than as an agronomist, I will never be able to be an expert as a data science. It's going to be challenging for me. But as an agronomist, if I can communicate with a computer science researcher very effectively, that we can both know what we are trying to do is something that I really enjoy. So my personal and the project experience is that.
One of the things that Dr. Thomasson touched on was that the agricultural and natural resources industries are perhaps a bit behind other sectors in adoption of AI technologies. And certainly there have been some really high-level successes, and then there's also been some high-level busts at that same time. So what I'm wondering is, what are some key takeaways from other sectors in AI adoption in those industries that agriculture researchers can integrate into their work in terms of both an academic and an industry perspective?
Before anybody jumps in on that, I'm going to take one last question, so please go ahead and answer this, but I'm going to take one last question, then I'm going to give you all a challenge to think on the recommendations that the paper gives, and I'm going to put them up on the screen so you can look back at them and just say, that's the one that I want to really mention, as emphasize, if you will. Did anybody want to address Dakota's question?
I have a quick idea from health informatics. I saw a big big improvement in the use of AI when standardization came into place. So that doesn't exist in agriculture nowadays. We heard that this is something that we're trying now, and this is a big issue with applications of AI in ag. So once that is taken care of, I believe we're going to see a boom in the applications of AI in ag.
I think one of the things that I think we are a little bit behind on compared to other industry is the data standardization and making the availability of standardized data, not just the data set, right? We tell agriculture generates a lot of data set, and now the question comes, how much of that data is really useful to train the models that, like for example, Facebook started collecting data and standardizing for a very, very long time, and they are coming up with a very, very highly robust algorithm. So I think that has to really happen in our case.
I think it's something. It might be not that bad that we are a little bit behind, and I don't know what behind means. Might be more cautious. I don't know. And another point for that is this: at least in animal science, we may not have the amount of data that we need. I'm not really sure that we have the data to actually train all of these AI models. And if we use all the data that we have to train the models, then we don't have any other data to validate the models. So it might be just the way it is. I mean, some areas in animal science may have the data, but the majority does not. They don't have the data. So I see that as I don't know. It could be something good. We're just waiting, and then I'm waiting for newer technologies to help us to collect more data, like sensors. Let's say, for instance, once we have more sensors and we narrow down those that we can use to collect the data that we need, then I think we'll be able to collect the data.
Yeah, I just had one quick question kind of relating to the educational aspect of it. We've talked about a lot of applications for artificial intelligence, ranging from like image classification to identifying sick animals to like identifying and spraying weeds. And I think that is very an interdisciplinary type of approach that we're talking about here. So when we start thinking about the importance of teaching the next generation about how to use artificial intelligence and what that means, like what are the essential core principles that you need to build a class around to make sure that they understand? Because we've had a small thing that has become really big, and then in order to teach it, we must make it small and communicable again. And so you have to distill it down to what's critical and important. So what's important for undergraduates, graduate students to learn so that they can identify those principles and take it back to their discipline and forward into their careers. Like, what are those things that they need to learn? Like, obviously coding is important, but as we've discussed, ChatGPT can code really well. So then it becomes essentially about the thought processes. And so what are those thought processes that a student needs to have when they start thinking about using this artificial intelligence in the future to answer their problems and problem solve?
Thinking about your question in the context of the previous one, I was thinking that I've led some AI projects in Syngenta, and they've been successful because we didn't divorce the AI from fundamental engineering principles, right? And we were thinking about how to reduce the size of the problem by leveraging the context, which might be, say, using a phone, but not expecting your model to figure out all the geometry of what you're seeing, but say leveraging the accelerometer on the phone to let you know more about the context, right? So just projecting that to your question, I think a good answer is let's leverage the superpower of, for example, engineering schools, right, to be able to teach AI in the context of fundamental engineering principles, right, and a systems approach to dealing with the phenomena that you're observing, right? Couple that with talking with growers about what their real problems are, and teaching the students to do that and to communicate, and you're in a perfect situation.
So I've been teaching a class called Digital and Precision Ag for the past, 6 years. And the first thing that I tell my students is I'm not going to make you data scientists. I'm going to teach you enough to be dangerous, basically know enough to communicate with data scientists, which was something that was discussed earlier on. So the idea is to demystify all of these techniques. So that's the first tool. The second one is to give them like a formal way of thinking like a data scientist, and then link back the research questions that they have to the specific tools. So showcasing a bunch of examples, although it seems simplistic, seems to work. And in my class, for example, I show them like 15 different things. I go wide but shallow. And that seems to work. But then also give them the tools to go deep if they want to. A lot of the students in my class end up taking computer science classes right afterwards. Because once they go around the problem of, oh my goodness, this sounds so hard, they are able to dive deep. So those are my advice.
So I'm going to stop our questions there. Thank you, audience, for the excellent questions. But before we wrap up, I would ask, and I'm going to start with Carlos. By the way, Carlos is leading the judging of our poster competition. So he's got to go in a couple of minutes. So I'm going to ask him to answer first. And just, if you don't mind, just look at one of the recommendations that we have here and say something about that particular recommendation. And then if anybody else has comments along those lines, we'll do that. By the way, and don't leave when the panel is over, because we do have one last presentation by Ag Launch that should be about on time. So hang in there.
So I would like to emphasize promote standards. As you know, AI machine learning feeds on data. If we don't have standardized data to develop those models, we're not going to be able to do it. And also curate your data. Make sure it's not only about making it standard, but also curating it and also sharing it. You cannot sharing it in a way that can be used. Have a look at the FAIR standards of data sharing, and also well, this is a criticism to ourselves. You cannot imagine how many papers are out there that say, oh, data is available in this repository, and it's not there. So please take that last step to share your data and curate it. Also, with going through using freely available data, we can also realize how much data is out there that is wrong, either wrongly labeled, and this is a problem of curating. So just keep that in mind.
I can be brief on my part here, or what I think. This promote education and training. I tend to believe that AI will be the thing that will allow those of us that work at land grants to really maximize what we bring, not just to enhance science, but also ensure that science is actually impacting people. And so I just think in my mind of a feedback loop between research, teaching, and extension, and vice versa, that we'll be able to provide an AI. And the good parts of AI are the quality data, and the not so quality data or recommendations based upon AI technology. So I'm very optimistic about that.
I'm going to echo what Carlos said earlier about promoting standards. That would be the one I go with. Seeking to make your data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable through the use of data and metadata standards that at the end of the day, especially now in these uncertain times of apparently decreasing investment in research, that makes your data go further, right, if you make it more reusable.
I would choose the promote practical and transparent algorithms. The advice that I give to all my students is maintain a good GitLab account and push up everything up there. And make sure that you understand what the model does. If you're a researcher in the area, yes, you can start using YOLO V8, but at some point you need to figure out what CNNs do. And so make sure that you explain that to yourselves, make sure that you explain that to everybody else. That's how knowledge moves to the next level and becomes from a little project to a general tool.
So being very early in the career, I would say promote funding for research, because it needs a lot of money to collect the data sets to develop anything for AI. So research funding is really important. And also whatever we develop, whatever models we train, I think the broad connectivity is going to be a challenge in the future to deploy all these autonomous systems and things like that. So I would say the funding part is the important one for me.
I'll go back to what I mentioned before. I think it's we have to ensure that the students know their basics, the fundamental knowledge of the science, and I think AI will become another tool. They will learn how to use it, just like was mentioned before. Stats was in the past, modeling computer was in the past. They will learn it, but we have to make sure, we have to ensure that our students know the underlying mechanism behind the biology.
And as the cybersecurity guy, I'm going to go with the promote cybersecurity because of a very simple thing that I'm seeing as we move further into these emerging technologies. With connectivity and all that comes with it to the internet comes a vulnerability that we need to recognize, and we need to have a discussion on that. We know what it looks like when we walk down a dangerous alley. We don't know what it looks like when we're on a malicious web page. We don't have that function that's inherent in us. So if we can start having these conversations at a much younger level, in the information age where all of us are connected to the internet, we're talking about utilizing data in each of these pieces. What does that look like in a secure form, and can you detect it? That is something that I think needs to just be more a part of our daily conversations. So that's what I would say.
Great, thanks, gentlemen. Excellent panel, so let's please give them a hand. And thank you. That'll wrap up our panel, and Margaret Oldham is going to come, so please don't run just yet, and talk about Ag Launch. And before I let Margaret take my HDMI cable real quick, HDMI cable, I'm going to pull up something else just for a moment. Just 30 seconds is all I need, Margaret. So earlier when I was starting us off, I mentioned this slide here. And Victor, you are here now? There he is. Victor, would you stand up and raise your hand so everybody can see who you are? So this is Victor, and this is his QR code. Oh, stop that. There we go. And so he's interested in interviewing you relative to Precision Ag Basics, the second edition, and just some things related to that. So please, if you're interested in doing an interview with Victor, take a picture of the QR code real quick, and then he will reach out to you. And that's it. Thanks, Victor.